We'd had a really pleasurable night at the Tide Mill Yacht Harbour. The showers were warm and the place was well kept. It's not the cheapest marina, but the one thing I would advise is if you don't need electricity, don't take it, because for the £6 that we paid, we boiled the kettle just once. As we rolled back the canopies and prepared to leave, suddenly the heavens opened and the biggest hailstones that I've seen for years started falling. So we pulled it back across for 5 minutes and then they stopped. The sun came out and we started making our way down this beautiful river once again. We were in absolutely no hurry and we had about an hour before we were going to get to our next mooring. We'd spoken to the harbour master, George, at Ramsholt Quay, and he had an available buoy in the middle of the river. If you've never stayed a night on a swing mooring, I advise you to do so. But we were just going to enjoy the River Deben and enjoy the trip down to Ramsholt. Just cutting our way through Waldringfield now, picking our way down the channel which goes between the berth boats, and there's the Maybush Inn over there. It's a great pub, and Waldringfield Marine, who run the visitor moorings here, and there's a few nice visitor moorings here. However, this dries out, so you need to be on a swing mooring ideally. Great pub though, the Maybush. Fantastic beach here. It's like a river walk here, goes from the pub the whole way along, and it's just sand all the way to the yacht club, all the way along the spit. It's a really lovely walk. It didn't take long before we arrived at Ramsholt. I could see the buoy that we needed to tie up to, and it was the first time that Dawn had taken the throttles, and we managed to get very close to it on the first attempt, but it did take us a couple of goes before I managed to hook the trailing eye, get a couple of bow ropes through and get the boat tied up. But we were fast and we were looking forward to really enjoying the beauty of Ramsholt Quay. And this is the view out of the back of the boat on the mooring at Ramsholt, and the boat is just turning on the tide. Absolutely priceless. Look at that. Money can't buy that. That's just pure luck. Time, sunset and tide all in perfect balance. As we sat watching this beautiful sunset, we felt thankful for the freedom that we have, and looked back 78 years beforehand when 10 young men left a nearby airfield, and for 8 of those, here, nearby where we were moored, was their final resting place. Toward the end of World War II, the United States Army Air Force flew from numerous airfields across East Anglia. As the war moved into 1944 and 1945, nearly all of the bomber fleet were replaced with the Boeing B-17, which harnessed a formidable reputation for sustaining damage and returning home. It wasn't uncommon for the aircraft to be patched up and flying again in a very short time. Here, a B-17G of the 91st Bomb Group can be seen returning to Bassingbourn, an aileron and most of a rudder missing, holes in the wings and fuselage, as well as unextinguished fires. Sadly, very few of these bomber crews would live through the war. Shortly after breakfast on Tuesday the 20th of February 1945, 568, previously nicknamed Little Davy 2, a B-17G of 860 Squadron, 493rd Heavy Bomber Group, took off from Debach Airfield just a few miles to the west. It developed a fire in number 3 engine, and as it was overflying Woodbridge at the time, the crew had no chance of ditching their bombs before attempting a forced landing in the river as the fire spread quickly to the wing. It was ditched in the deepest part of the River Deben, close to the Ramsholt Arms, and immediately sank. Of the crew, only the pilot, co-pilot and flight engineer managed to escape the aircraft, but the co-pilot was quickly washed away with the current. Of the 2 survivors, one swam to shore, whilst the other was rescued by a local fisherman. George Collins, now harbour master, was 14 at the time and remembers the events well.
I was 14, we were working on the farm then.
Yeah.
And we'd up at 7 in the morning when that crashed in the water. And we were working on the farm, and in the evening when we come down and saw it there, we just see the tail end of the plane at low water, out of the water. And then the next night we come down again, and they'd got some pontoons down and tied the pontoons around it to lift it up. As it took water come in, that lifted the plane off the bottom of the mud.
Yeah.
And they had a bit of tank on the grass there with a long wire on, and they pulled it up on the mud right up on the beach. And then they took the bodies out. The next day the Americans come down and took the bodies out and took them away, and the pilot and co-pilot got out, and the chap called Arthur Hunt, he was a skipper of a boat for the Gilby's gin people, and he used to tie it on the quay just here. And he was down here that morning, him and a mate of his, and they got their motor launch and picked the 2 people up. They rescued them, and they were alive, they were right.
Who was sitting on the mud? Were they just...
No, they picked them up, floating out when they see the plane come down. And they launched their motorboat and picked the 2 out what was in the water.
Okay. And when did you first see it? Did you first see it when it was in the water?
We just sort of the next night, well, the same night, we could see it low water. We could see the tail end of the plane sticking out of the water. And then the next night when we come down, they'd put the pontoons around it, and the next day they pulled it up on the beach, and we could see it all then. And they laid up on the beach in several months. It laid up on the beach, right up on the sand.
Yeah.
And all us youngsters around here used to play in it.
Yeah.
Because we'd never been in a plane before, or ever been in a plane since. That was the only plane I've ever been in, and we used to sit in the pilot's cockpit and play around with all the things. And they took the bombs out because the bombs weren't loaded. Yeah. Apparently they don't load them until they get to Germany when they want to drop them. Use them. They don't fuse them. So they took the bombs out and the bodies out and left it on the beach there. And the Americans used to had a big had a tent, and they used to be on guard down here, but they never took any notice of young boys playing around in it.
They didn't go in the pub and spend most of the time in the pub.
No, they did, yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And they ditched because that was one engine was alike, but apparently that plane had been in trouble before. Engine trouble, and that had to come back from Germany and crash landed. So the actual plane itself had been in trouble before they had landed in the water here. And one of the crew at the bottom got stuck in the door when they opened the door.
Yeah, I see.
But they got the parachutes on and he couldn't get out.
So the actual parachute was probably the reason why he couldn't actually get out the door in the first place, because
they reckoned that's why. I mean, the pilot and co-pilot got out because they were up top.
Yeah.
They could get out all right.
Oh.
I mean, that was all underwater, but they could get out. But when they opened the door to let the other ones out of the water, just gushed in and they just drowned.
A plaque was placed dedicating the site as an official memorial to the crew of 4338568 in 1994, and there are now a growing number of historians and enthusiasts keeping the memory of those that gave so much for our freedom alive. The 493rd, their mission logs and roll call are just a few of the treasured pieces of history that are kept at a dedicated museum open to the public most weekends at Debach Airfield. At 92, George is a remarkable man, and we felt honoured to capture his thoughts and memories so many years later. We'd awoken again to an absolutely amazing day and made our way ashore. It was wonderful to see a horse on the beach, which took us back to days gone by. We decided to have a walk along the foreshore, and we were going to visit the Ramsholt All Saints Church. It's one of the 38 round tower churches of Suffolk and was once under the control of the Augustinian monasteries. After the Reformation, it had neither a rector nor a vicar and was one of the churches that came under the title of something called a perpetual curate, a title that was abolished in 1968. It's a wonderful walk and it's not too far, and it's ideal to build up an appetite, which is exactly what we're going to do, because we wish to have a little bit of lunch and then we were going to be heading back to sea and returning to Lowestoft. And then, out of nowhere suddenly, the RAF Battle of Britain Memorial Flight Lancaster flew down the River Deben. It was almost like it was a tribute to the B-17 crew. And all too soon our time in Ramsholt was coming to a close. We reflected back on what a wonderful few days we'd had, the beautiful sunset and the absolutely stunning scenery that surrounded us.
When you're lost and no one's there, and you wonder who even cares, oh, come back to your breath, don't drift away from me. I will come down to remind you of before. We can fly away from here. We can stay close, my dear. Swept up and away from all our fears. How are we supposed to know on our own? Together we can go slow. Why don't you leave it all to me? I know how hard it all can be. I'm here to hold your hand through this. Whoa, I'll be beside you all alone. My love for you is so strong. We're right where we belong. Wander around the same old town.
Ramsholt is a beautiful and tranquil place, but being ex-military myself, I certainly felt the poignancy and wouldn't forget the sacrifice that others made for us so many years ago. In the next episode, we have a few more words with George when he remembers life on Ramsholt Quay when he was younger, and also we take a slow journey back to Lowestoft. We have a few problems with our autopilot, and then we celebrate the Queen's Platinum Jubilee.